All right, let's practice some sentences. I'm going to prompt you with English sentences based on the grammar from Unit 1, Lesson 9, and it's going to be your job to try to translate those sentences into Korean. Just like in Lessons 6 and 7, the focus of Lesson 9 was on conjugations. Therefore, just like the sentence practice videos of Lesson 6 and Lesson 7, I'm also going to prompt you with the formality that you should use in addition to the sentence that I want you to translate. The first sentence I would like you to try is, Seoul is a big city. And let's conjugate that using the informal high respect form. I'll give you 10 seconds and you can start now. Okay, the subject of the sentence is Seoul, so I will write that here. Seoul. That's the subject, so I'm going to include the subject particle here. I want to indicate that it is a city, so I'm going to write the word city here, which is doshi. But I specifically want to indicate that it's a big city, and the adjective to be big in Korean is 크다. However, if I want to describe an upcoming noun like this, you should know that you shouldn't use ta here, and instead you need to add this to the adjective. Right now this says 서울은 큰 도시, but that is not a sentence. I need to indicate that it is a big city, and the word for is or am or are or were or was in Korean is ida. So I need to put ida here. And that would be a possible way to say this sentence. However, this would be conjugated in the formal low respect form. We want to conjugate this into the informal high respect form. When I want to do that, what I want to do is basically, because doshi ends in a vowel, I want to add this ending. And this actually is ida. It's just a conjugation of ida in this formality. This sentence would read, 서울은 큰 도시예요. The second sentence I would like you to try is, this is not pork. And let's conjugate this using the formal high respect form. I'll give you 10 seconds and you can start now. Okay, the subject of the sentence is this or this thing. You could also say this sentence is, this thing is not pork, but you could also just simplify it to say this. The way you say that is 이. 이 just refers to this something, but if you're talking about this thing, you'd have to say 이것, and that's the subject, so I'm going to include the subject particle here. Now, I want to say that it's not something. In this first sentence, I indicated that it is something using the word 이다. However, in this sentence, because I'm saying that it's not something, I want to use the word 아니다. 아니다. So I'm going to see that as the final word in this sentence. But let's first indicate what this thing is not by using the word for pork. 돼지, 돼지 means pig, and 고기 means meat. So 돼지고기 simply means pig meat, or in English we would translate that to pork. Now in Korean, when they use ida, ida gets added directly to the noun that it's talking about. But 아니다 does not get added directly to the noun. Instead, you want to add this particle here and then put 아니다 here. This would say 이것은 돼지고기가 아니다. However, this is not a conjugated sentence, and I would want to conjugate this using the formal high respect. If I want to do that, what I should do is add either add this to it or this to it. I need to decide based on whether this ends in a vowel or a consonant, and because this ends in a vowel, I don't want to add this, and I want to add this to it, so it's going to be 아닙니다. This sentence would read, 이것은 돼지고기가 아닙니다. The third sentence I would like you to try is, PE, or physical education, PE is a fun class. And let's conjugate that into the informal low respect form. I'll give you 10 seconds and you can start now. Okay, the subject of the sentence is PE, and the word for PE is 체육. If I just want to talk about hanja here for a second, che actually refers to body, and yuk actually refers to education. So it's sort of body education, and in English we would call that PE. That's the subject of the sentence, so I'll include this here. Now I want to indicate that it is a class, so I'm going to put the word for class here, which is suop. However, I want to specifically indicate that it's a fun class, and the word for to be fun is 재밌다, 재미있다. However, just like we saw up here, I can't just put 크다 here, and I can't just put 재밌다 here. I need to indicate that this is describing this noun, and the way that I would normally do that, as we saw above, is to add either this or this to the adjective. However, as you know, if an adjective ends in it, you should add 는 to it instead. So this should say 재미있는 수업. Now I want to indicate that this is something, and I want to use the word for is again, which is 이다. Again, this would be a possible conjugation, but this is specifically not the informal low respect conjugation. So I need to either add ya, or I want to add ia. And the way that I decide is if this noun here ends in a consonant, I would add ia, and if this noun ends in a vowel, I would add ya. Because this noun ends in a consonant, I don't want to add ya, and I want to add ia. This sentence would read, 체육은 재미있는 수업이야. The next sentence I would like you to try is, I will start the class now. And let's conjugate this using the informal high respect form. I'll give you 10 seconds and you can start now. Okay, here's the subject of the sentence. I'm going to use the formal 저 to indicate that it's I because it's a high respect form. The verb that I'm doing is start, and it's in the future tense, so I'll talk about that later. I'm going to indicate that I'm doing it now, so I'll put the adverb for now, 지금. And then the class is the thing that the verb is going to be acting on. So the class is the object of the sentence, which the word for class, as we saw up here, is 수업. 수업. Again, that's the object, so I'm going to include the object particle as well. Now I want to indicate that I start this object. The verb for to start is 시작. And in lesson 9, you learned a different way that you can conjugate into the future tense by doing this. You would have to write the verb here, that's the stem of the verb, and you put this onto the stem of the verb if the stem of the verb ends in a vowel, which this does. Then that actually describes this noun, which actually just means thing. But in this case, you don't really think of it as meaning thing, but even though it does mean thing. Now what I want to do is, because I can't end this sentence just with this noun here, I want to add ida to it and conjugate it. Because we're conjugating into the informal high respect form, what I would want to do is add this followed by this to it. It would also be possible to, instead using the noun 것, you could use the noun 거, which actually is the same thing as 것. It's just sort of a condensed form or a simplified form. But if you're doing that, now the noun 것, now the noun here that ida is being attached to ends in a vowel. So if you did it this way, you would want to finish this way, 예요, which is the same thing that we saw up here when I added 예요 to 도시, because 도시 ends in a vowel. And here 거 also ends in a vowel. So this whole sentence would read, 저는 지금 수업을 시작할 거예요. The fifth sentence I would like you to try is, this flower is pretty. And let's conjugate that using the informal high respect form again. I'll give you 10 seconds and you can start now. Okay, the subject of the sentence is a flower, and the noun for a flower is 꽃. Now it's this flower, so if I want to specifically talk about this flower, I should put the the word E before quotes, so I'm talking about this flower. Now this is the subject of the sentence, so I'll include this here. Now hopefully you realize that I was trying to trick you. This sentence, just like the third sentence, the second sentence, and the first sentence, they all have is. And this also has is. And it's a very common mistake for Korean learners to actually think that because a sentence has is in English, therefore it must have ida in Korean. However, you should know that if you're talking about just describing something like this, that something is an adjective, you actually don't need to include ida in this sentence. Even though this whole lesson is about ida, I wanted to include this type of sentence to really try to test you to see if you think that you would need to add ida to this sentence. You actually wouldn't need to add ida to this sentence, and if I wanted to conjugate this perfectly, all I would need to do is put the adjective to be pretty in Korean, which is 예쁘다, which looks like this. However, that's an unconjugated form of the adjective, and if I want to conjugate it using the informal high respect form, we learned about the irregulars in lesson 7, so you'd want to add this to it. This sentence would read, 이 꽃은 예뻐요. We could actually create a sentence that has a similar meaning that would use ida. For example, if I wanted to say, this is a pretty flower. Why don't you try translating this sentence? I'll give you 10 seconds and you can start now. Okay, again, just like we saw up here, the noun this, or this thing, is 이것, and we'll put the subject marker on it here. Now, again, I'm talking about this being a flower, just like I saw up here as PE being a class and Seoul being a city. So the noun that this is, or the noun that ida will be attached to, is flower. So I'll write the word flower here. And it's not just a flower, but it's specifically a pretty flower. So I want to use the adjective to be pretty here. But as we saw in the first sentence up here, I can't just use the base form of the adjective. I need to add this letter to it. So it's specifically describing this noun as being pretty. And now I can add ida to this. So I could just add ida, and this would be a conjugation, but if I want to conjugate it to the informal high respect form, because this ends in a consonant, I would have to add 이, 에, 요. And this sentence would read, 이것은 예쁜 꽃이에요. Well, that was fun. I hope you learned a lot.